right, everyone, welcome to The Leftover, a series hosted by Flashfood where we talk to some of the most incredible people across the industry of food, technology, and now one of our first guests that's actually, I'm not supposed to say celebrity chef, but I wanted to say it. It was going to come from my soul because you're a celebrity chef in my mind. Chef and writer Garrett Schlichte. I hope I said it right. I blew it.
You did, but it's Schlichte.
Schlichte.
Yeah, isn't
It's
that crazy?
fancier.
I
Yeah.
know.
Well, we don't have to edit it because we can make it cute because Schlichte is unforgettable.
Yeah, it's just leave it in.
Just leave it in. Garrett comes to us from being a contestant on the first season of America's Test Kitchen. Garrett is also one of the most famous celebrities hosting the most elite dinner party here in the Bay Area called the Virgo Supper Club. For those who have seen and heard of it online, please, please, please find a way to get a ticket because the events are
Wow.
incredible and support amazing communities and amazing creators. And today we're just going to go over your journey. You've had an insanely beautiful journey going from someone who's worked not only sort of at the forefront of the restaurant industry, but you've been on giant national television. You've created communities that are close to food, close to queerness, close to the connections of just being a human in this wild world. And as I told you, this whole series is about the leftovers, which is the things unsaid, the things left behind the fridge, the leftover that you wish you could have eaten, but you forgot about and you didn't. If you want to take a second and tell us your journey from the start, and then I'll ask you a bunch of crazy things as we go.
Yeah, amazing. Well, you did a great job, first of all.
Thank you so
That was
much.
a beautiful, more than I deserve on that intro. So thank you so much. My journey is honestly very much a winding path. I think maybe in terms of kind of the theme of the leftovers, I think I've been a person constantly trying to figure out how to do the best I can do with what I've got kind of at the time or what's in front of me. Something that I think not a lot of people know is that my full career post college actually started. I got my master's in higher education
Wow.
and used to be the assistant director of student life at Johns Hopkins satellite campus in Washington D.C. I was the coordinator of orientation at American University, which was such a wild.
So you were actually at the origins of the forefront of science and technology.
Definitely, I was
Yeah.
at the forefront, at the meeting of science and technology is
Correct.
really where I was,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I absolutely, obviously, did not belong there. So
That's not
I
true at all. In my mind, that just makes perfect sense that that was where it all began.
But that is where I guess my professional career began. And then I moved to San Francisco because I had to get out of higher education. And I was working for this company called Dipsy, which is an audio erotica story studio that I love so much. And during that time, I'd grown up cooking, had always been cooking, but had kind of started to venture more so into writing and I said, my kind of brief stint in higher education. Then I moved to San Francisco, kept writing, got laid off, as most of us do at some point in the Bay Area, because that is how technology and science goes, I guess.
Phoenixes. It's a lot
Yeah.
of phoenixes.
And then 2 weeks later, I went and competed on America's Test Kitchen: The Next Generation, the cooking show that you mentioned.
Wait, so food,
Yeah.
how, yeah,
So I grew up. I really
yeah,
glazed over that. I grew up cooking mostly. My
yeah, yeah.
dad, and honestly, the more that I think about it, I kind of followed a weird trajectory that my dad did. My dad is an attorney. His dad was an attorney. But somewhere in between law school and becoming an attorney, he owned an Italian restaurant in
Okay.
Florida. And
Huge side quest.
just a huge side quest that he went on to do
Yeah.
that, which I didn't even know for a really long time. I think I was a teenager before I you know what I mean. I think I was 2 years old or something, and he
Yeah.
has pictures of me in the restaurant sitting on a table, and I was like, "What restaurant is this?" And he was like, "That was
Okay.
my restaurant," and I was like,
But
"What?"
you grew up in, you grew up in the you grew up in the
I grew up in the kitchen.
kitchen. Yeah, but Showtime kitchen, not just the
Yes, not
kitchen
just
you found.
home kitchen. It
Yeah.
was kind of all of it. And I don't know, there's all these weird kind of ways that food's been in my life in a lot of different ways. My grandmother, who I unfortunately never actually had the chance to meet because she died before I was born, used to win our local town's apple pie baking contest every year, so much so that they renamed it the Mary T. Schlichte Apple Pie Baking Contest after she passed away.
Wow.
So it's like even cooking competition was like really involved
In
in my
your,
life.
it was like, it was in your blood.
Yeah, in all these weird ways that was like really, it's like really funny to think about. Obviously, spiritually, psychically, it like makes sense that I like
Hmm.
found my way back to food because like it's kind of been part of my family's story for so long. All of that is to say that I never had really like classic food training. I never went to culinary school. I kind of like learned on the ground or like learned as I went. I went and competed on America's Test Kitchen: The Next Generation, which was a show to find like the best home cooks in
Yeah.
America. I, spoiler alert, did not win, but I made it very, very far, which was very exciting. But then I came back to San Francisco, still without a job, being a reality TV competition loser. And there was a restaurant that was looking for some people to work front of house for them. And I was like, well, I'm going to go work front of house at this restaurant to like figure it out.
You can
In the
go.
interim, I'd like started Virgo Supper Club. I was like doing this supper club. What the people at this restaurant knew that I had my own kind of like little underground supper club that I was running with my friend Laura. They needed help back of house. So the chef de cuisine at the time, Selassie, was like, hey, do you want to jump back into the kitchen for a night and like do a stage? So I staged in this fine dining kitchen,
Yeah.
which
So
was
like
really.
stage for people that don't know.
Stage is like an internship. It's like a generally
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a very short internship.
Okay.
Generally unpaid. This was paid. It was amazing. I like went and did my little stage. If you watch The Bear, it's like exactly what it looks like. It was very stressful, but really fun. And
Yeah.
at the end of that first night, they were like, "Hey, you
You're like,
are
everyone
obviously."
knows what this is now because of the bear.
That's literally, you know. I was like, "It's we understand."
Everyone knew, no one knew until the bear.
Suddenly people are like walking around being like, oh, you stage? And I was like, how do you even know? How do you know that word? Anyway, at the end of my first night, they were like, hey, you are obviously not classically trained, but you are a really hard worker and you do have really good instincts. Do you want to come back and do this again? And I was like, yes, I would love to. So I went back and did it again a second night. And at the end of the second night, they were like, do you just want to like jump on the line full time? Like what you have is like really strong instincts and you're a really hard worker, like you're pretty smart and like I can teach you. They were like, we can teach you like the rest of it. Like we can
Yeah.
teach you knife cuts, like we can teach you some of like the more appropriate culinary things, but like what you can't really teach people is like instinctually how to behave in a fast-paced, really like stressful, tight work environment. Honestly, which is like kind of what it was like working in higher education. So like weirdly, a lot of that organizational getting shit done really came back to
Happens.
me. And then I worked in a fine dining restaurant for like almost a year. And then I was like, I can't do this anymore. At that point, I was turning 30, which is such a beautiful age, but I was like, my body has not been
Saturn was
trained.
returning. Saturn was returning.
Saturn had fully returned. I did the whole thing. And so then I transitioned into doing more private chef work, which is really what I'm doing now. So,
So going back to that moment, it is like kind of brave, right? To go on to a television show. Talk a little bit more about like the moment, like you applied, you get on,
yeah.
you're on. Like what was
Yeah.
that like? Like what did you like pull out of yourself? Like
Yeah.
it's such a pivotal thing and you just like went right past it. You were like, yeah, and then it happened and then I was
And
there.
then like a couple things. One, as much as I'm a child of cooking with my dad and having grown up in a kitchen, I'm also a child of Food Network. I watched cooking shows growing up all the time. I also was such a big fan of America's Test Kitchen and Dan and Julia and Elle and Jack and everybody on that show. So
Yeah.
one, it was just an exciting opportunity. But two, anytime I'm cooking in my house, I'm on a cooking show. I'm like you know what I mean? I'm like I was raised by Rachel Ray and Giada De Laurentiis. I always have kind of been narrating. So also the prize of winning America's Test Kitchen was to become a cast member on the show. And like
Okay.
that was really exciting to me. I think like the thing to your point or like your question, like what I had to pull out, I obviously, unfortunately, probably obviously to some people, was a musical theater kid in high school. I loved to be on stage. I loved to be in front of people and make people laugh. And like I was never ever shy in any way, shape, or form. You know that scene? Have you seen Hercules? Sorry, this is
Yeah.
a weird.
Was it like the Disney movie?
Yeah, when all the planets line up and then like it like unleashes the Titans, like it's
Yeah,
like this
yeah,
like
yeah.
perfect. It was like
I
I'd
can
been laid
hear the
off.
song in my head that's like
It's
playing right
I,
now.
I'd been laid off from my job. I didn't have anything else to do. I was really looking for something that like was maybe going to be a new path for me. And then it was like all the planets perfectly aligned. And then they cast me. Like the casting process was actually like pretty quick, which was really interesting. I submitted my application and then didn't expect to hear back for like however long. And then I think a week later, I got a call from a producer that was like, hey, we'd love to talk to you about this.
And you were just like, what in the world? Like, can you pattern recognize that energy now when you're feeling or doing something? Like, there's always the gift of like that. Because you keep being like, I have great, they knew I had great instincts. I feel like, do you feel like you found something in that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like I have a better sense now about going towards things energetically that feel right for me or like feel like there's a place that I'm supposed to be in. This maybe sounds like crazy to say. I feel like I'm a person who's like always had a lot of dreams and has wanted to do a lot of things. And I think in pursuit of those different things, sometimes I've tried to like shoehorn myself into places that I like didn't really belong in. It wasn't bad to be there, but I was like really trying and like running myself up against a wall. And I feel like now I do have a little bit of a better sense of being like, oh, this like energetically feels like things are like moving in the right
Yeah.
way. Like maybe I'm still nervous about this or like maybe I'm still a little apprehensive, but it's not a block. Like I feel like I better
Yeah.
understand.
What does it feel like?
I think for me it feels really like true sense of excitement more than just like a yearning for something. It's honestly kind of a little bit of like the lack of yearning. I feel like I'm a person
Yeah.
who has for so long really like loved the feeling of wanting and breaking through that a little bit and like having this like, oh, things are just like starting to go right. Like things are starting to be a little easy, which for me is almost has always been bad in the past. Like
Yeah.
I've been used to a struggle and now I think it's like letting myself feel some of that ease is like, oh, let's go towards that
Happening.
for a little bit.
Does it
Which is,
taste like anything? You're a chef.
does it taste like anything?
Like, what food is it? It's not like a schnitzel. Does it feel like a schnitzel? Is it like a schnitzel sizzle?
No, it honestly it feels like when you are like frying a bunch of shallots and there's like a point where the bubbles change, like it's how you know that things are like actually getting crispy and it's working. It like goes from being these like big, really vigorous, like anxious big bubbles to kind of like softer, it like foams away and then you can kind of really see this like beautiful golden brown thing happening.
Yeah.
I think that's probably more so what it is. Schnitzel in and of itself was a moment like that for me, but this was very different.
Schnitzel is the turning point. No,
Yeah.
but I knew you had like it had to feel and look like something. And
Yeah. I don't think I've ever thought about it before in that way, but I think that's like the best way
the
to really
best
describe
example
it.
about
Yeah.
it. Well, so now you've gone on this journey. Now, private chef, supper clubbing, fully in chef realm.
Fully in chef realm, which is something that like leaving my first day of this private chef job that I'd started like 4 or 5 months ago, there was like a gap between finishing the restaurant and private chefing where I was like, what am I gonna do? Like, am I just gonna go back to kind of copywriting tech world? Is that really where I'm gonna be? Is there a way to kind of make food work in a real way, you know, that like was sustainable, that felt good to me? And it worked out that I kind of stepped into this amazing private chef job that I have really loved so much that like I think has a lot of opportunity that also has allowed me to do my own food stuff on Instagram and my like newsletter and pursue some creative food writing that I've really wanted to be doing. But I was walking home after my first day at this private chef job, which is like right by Alamo Square Park. So I'm walking right past the Painted Ladies and the sun is setting. It's like this beautiful day in San Francisco. And my best friend Joe, who I live with, texted me kind of unprompted and was like, hey, I've just been thinking about you today and like I just want you to really remember that like if you could go back in time to yourself like 4 years ago and tell that person that like they had a full-time job working in food like for a place that like loved the food they were making.
So,
I literally like started crying. I feel very lucky to have some of like the best, but it was just kind of that moment
Yeah.
where I was like, yeah, my life's taken like a lot of different twists and turns and like this particularly working in food has just felt like such a gift and such like a blessing and like it's definitely hard won and it is like yeah kind of a life that I like never I can't believe that like what I get to do is wake up and think about food and then cook food. Like that is my job and that is
it's
like
incredible.
it's really incredible. It's like really special and it's
You
really
followed the shallot bubbles. You
I followed the shallot bubbles to the
followed
end.
the shallot bubbles to where you are. Talk about food waste and food in the restaurant industry in your world. Like, give me the like, what do you see? What do you feel? What makes you angry? What excites you?
Totally. I think there is like so much that is like such a rich conversation truly to dive into. I feel particularly lucky that like my start at the restaurant was for a chef de cuisine who wanted to run a zero waste kitchen, which essentially just means we are doing our best to use everything that we bring into that kitchen. Of course, we like compost and things like that, but we're like trying to compost the least amount we possibly can. And something that like looks like that like really pissed me off when I was working there that like I had to like really grow to love was we had this one like tuna crudo dish that had citrus supremes in it, like citrus segments in it.
Yeah.
One of my prep responsibilities was to
Citrus
supreme.
segments are like little, what is that?
So citrus segments are essentially like all of the different individual pieces of an orange, right? Like all
Yeah.
of the different sections, but like
Yeah.
to supreme it is to like cut off, like you don't peel it, you cut off all the skin so it like exposes like the flesh
Okay,
of
okay.
it. And then you cut in between each membrane so you get like a perfect kind of like naked piece of orange is the best way to describe it.
Oh,
And it's really sexy and it's really juicy and it's really beautiful and it's also all of the parts of the orange are really exposed. So seasoning can get in there. It's a very fancy thing
and
to
then it like
do.
sits with the tuna, so they're like kind of in this like,
And it kind of like looks like tuna
yeah,
a
they're
little bit.
like
You know,
there,
it's like really
exposed.
stunning.
Everyone feels exposed. Yeah,
Everyone feels exposed. Everyone's like open to all the possibilities of being seasoned and it's really
it's
delicious.
amazing.
But when like I knew before going into the kitchen how to supreme a piece of citrus, right? Like you like cut it off. I'd like seen people do it. But because we were trying to run a zero waste kitchen, like when I first started to do it, I was just composting all of this orange peel, right? Like all of the pieces that I'd cut off. And Selassie was like, that's not what we're doing. And then she showed me, she took an orange and she took a vegetable peeler and she peeled off like all of the strips of zest from the outside, which left it like the white pith underneath,
Right.
right? Because we were saving the orange zest to dehydrate to turn into togarashi seasoning. And then she cut off all of the white pith and put that in a separate container because we were going to save that and then use that to make citrus vinegars.
Oh, wow.
And then she supremed the citrus to take out all of the citrus supremes, but she saved the carcass because we were going to use like the carcasses that like still have like some juice and meat attached to make citrus jams. And so like whereas before I was like just cutting and kind
Like
of moving,
blob and out. Yeah.
what before was taking me 4 minutes to do was going to take me 10 minutes to do because it was like this very careful process. All of that was in service of reducing food waste and using everything that was available to us. And I kind of, like I said, it like really pissed me off. I was like, this is making my prep time so much longer. Like,
Right.
this is a horrible habit no one should do, but obviously, like, nothing will kickstart the return to a smoking habit, like working in a professional kitchen. And I was like, this new way of doing this will like
This is
not allow.
happening.
Like, this you've taken away my cigarette break essentially, which was like really frustrating. Obviously, good for me in the long run, but it was one of those things that like by the time I was done, I really loved it because I really understood the whole
It's
process.
almost like you had to be retrained. Like you,
Totally. Your mind has to be like completely rewired in that way. Like I think as a culture are so taught to like value efficiency over maybe like accuracy or like certainly over sustainability that
yeah.
like we just move and blow past all of these things and like this is not the most efficient way to supreme an orange, right? But it was the most sustainable way, and it was the best way, and it was the most delicate way.
Yeah.
And I think that really opened my eyes when I was in the kitchen to how to view food waste and to change my relationship to also parts of the food that like are parts of fruits and vegetables that people would throw away, you know? And I think, I've seen people use like kale stems to make a salsa verde with, and I think like
Oh,
it's
that's such
things
a good idea.
it's and it's like delicious and it's crunchy. Something that like I have always kind of like stomped my feet about are like cilantro stems or like dill stems, like any like tender herb stem. I'm like,
Yeah.
use those. You know what I mean? Like use that. Like what a dill stem actually tastes like is crunchy dill. You
Yeah, and it
know,
just needs like a different
it needs to
vehicle.
be finer. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
needs like a slightly different approach, but there are just like so many ways to slow down a little bit, And like the world moves very quickly. People only have so much time, but like when I think anyone is
But everyone has time for sauce.
everyone has time for sauce. I could not agree more.
I actually think that's like really forgotten. Everything
Listen,
can become a sauce for the most part, and
and
everything is in fact better with sauce.
everything's better with I will go home and cook for my family now, and my dad will be like, "You're just making a bunch of sauces," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, because that's still." I was like, "That actually is, I think, like the great unlock is like." If everything comes with a delicious sauce, then everything can be delicious. You know, like that's like one of my most popular recipes is this like chicken for one-ish, which is just kind of like a spatchcock roasted chicken
Yeah.
that's like roasted pretty quickly. But it the recipe is to be made with a chicken fat chimichurri and a lemon aioli. And oh my god, the chicken isn't the most flavorful chicken that's ever been made, but it happens pretty quickly, and then you have two delicious sauces, which is like
Yeah.
really, this chicken is a vehicle for sauce. Anyway, sorry. I
I
love
feel like
sauce.
when you make your food waste sauce book, I'm going to try to get the first
Please.
signature because you
I mean, definitely. You should write the intro for it. Did you see the Thanksgiving ranch that I made?
know.
Okay, great. Well, one of my favorite things to do after like any holiday, but where you like have a ton of herbs or something left over, is to throw them in a food processor with like sour cream or Greek yogurt. This year I made something called Thanksgiving Ranch, which is just like this like really herby
Which
yogurt
is like all
sauce.
the herbs because there's so many herbs left
Because
over.
there's so many herbs, and like I panic buy herbs, which is like not food waste helpful, but then I like blitz up a bunch of like parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme with like whatever sour cream or Greek yogurt I've got left over, and then a little bit of lemon
Wash
juice,
it
and then
in.
it's Thanksgiving ranch, and it's delicious. And then
I think that I think you've got like a whole book.
I mean, honestly, I am like, no one take this idea.
No, we won't. We
Kitchen
can
waste
cut it out.
sauce.
Okay, so food waste in a restaurant, much like food waste in our lives, is a complete reprogramming and appreciation of like, it's not slow because it's not, is it fair to call it's not slow, it's just different. Because we would call it slow if we weren't like, it's considerate. Is that more of the word?
I
It's
think it's
like,
considerate, yeah, and
yeah.
I think it is just kind of like this reprogramming. I think at least when growing up, like the stems are like the bad heart. I think it's like a reprogram of like how we're thought about things. You know, I even think back to like when I used to cut a cucumber and like I would cut the top off of the cucumber. You know, I would cut like that much of the
It's like a
top off
tiny
of the
little thing
cucumber
in a
to trim it, and
pizza.
I'm like, it's a tiny little thing, and also you wouldn't even notice it if you ate it. You know what I mean?
No.
Like they're just things like that that I think we have really been conditioned for so long to think about as bad that like we just don't know better. We don't know differently, and I don't know
Yeah.
if there's like a ton of education happening around that.
You're one of the few out there that's like, here's how we do the sauce. It's not that popular, but it's so weird because it's just like it's like cool creative. I guess people don't want to be creative because it feels like tiring, it feels risky and all of those
I
things.
also I also think people are really afraid of cooking. Like I think like I have friends who are like so beholden to a recipe because they're afraid of burning something or something being bad,
Yeah.
which like obviously makes so much sense. Like cooking, like you do kind of have to like I don't know, it's like the Julia Childs of it all. It's like, with the courage of your convictions, like you do have to kind of just like floor it sometimes to like get the best result, and I think people are really afraid of getting it wrong, like
Mm.
obviously, which makes sense. No one wants to eat bad food, but like I'm like, you really have to mess up to make something inedible, like if something's a little off because you decided to like use a little bit more. Something that I try to be cognizant of in recipe writing is like, I don't ever want to tell somebody to use half the amount of dill that they're going to buy at the store because probably that dill is going to sit in their crisper drawer and wilt, and then they're going to throw it away.
Right.
And I think it's like one of those things where like if a recipe calls for like 4 scallions and someone bought a bundle of scallions that had 6 scallions in it, I'm like, just use all 6. You know what I mean? I'm like, there
You're
are
gonna
little
be
things
okay.
like that where it's like
It's probably gonna be great.
it's probably going to be better, in all honesty. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it's like use an abundance of what you have. More is
And
better.
also, I'm just like super hung up on the sauce thing because I feel like sauce is also the gateway to cooking because it's so easy.
I'm like, that's the secret that big restaurant doesn't want you to know. You can make anything at home.
Okay, so a lot of times the leftover is like the fear of it all, right? You had
Hmm.
just talked a little bit about like we're afraid. Last examples of like something that just made what in the kitchen maybe made you afraid and you ran at it, accomplished it. Maybe it still scares you.
Totally. I mean, I do have like a delusional sense that like like someone asked me once like what the worst thing I ever served was, and I was like, I've never served anything bad. And that's not because I'm amazing. That's because like I'll just keep going until it tastes good. I'm not afraid of serving bad food. Dinner might come out half an hour later than it was supposed to, but I've got the time to make it good, like
And
that.
you've got the time to sit.
I think that like maybe a an interesting way of answering that question is after the show came out, after I was on the show, is kind of like, am I going to be a person who like works in food media? Like, is that something that's available to me? And something I didn't do for like almost a year was put out any kind of like video food content because I was so self-conscious about it. In my mind, there was something that was permissible about being on a TV show and having them put out video stuff of me, but it just felt like so icky, I guess, is like the best way to put it, to like film myself in my house doing recipes. Like I was still developing recipes. I have like a newsletter and I was taking beautiful pictures of my food, but nobody was seeing that. Like, unfortunately, that's just like not necessarily the thing, the algorithm that we're all beholden to rewards, which is so, fucked up, obviously. Yeah, but I was really self-conscious about putting out my own video content of me cooking because it also opens you up to a ton of criticism.
Oh yeah, I mean the internet was built on the backs of trolls.
And I was like, as it turns out, people have a lot of opinions, and I'm fragile. And I cannot always handle them. Honestly, our good mutual friend Nick is one of the people who like really encouraged me to do it and was kind of like, get over yourself, you little baby, and just like do it. And
I'm so proud of Nick for having that combo, because sometimes I call Nick and I'm like, get over.
Totally. And
make your farm.
I'm sure there is something that he needs to be told to get over. So Nick, get over it.
The hardest part about that is that it's going to make Nick feel so good that he got mentioned on this and he's not even here.
I know. And I'm wearing
and we're shouting out to Solar Punk.
So, and Patagonia. I'm wearing all of my friends' merch today. So there's that. I hope everybody feels this. Anyway,
they're all here. They're all here.
The gang's all here. They're all with me. Honestly, like, the Solar Punk and Patty are, like, huge parts of, like, me kind of running towards that, I think. Like, that was really something that I was really nervous to do in the kitchen that I have started to do, which has been really wonderful and really rewarding in so many ways, and also is still scary, and also some people are literally horrible monsters. But I think, yeah, it has given me, like, a lot of confidence and, like, made parts of it fun, again, or like interesting. And I still think that I like occupy a like kind of special small corner of the internet where like also most of it is like still really nice and really lovely, and I feel really lucky about that. Like, people are like, I'm still small enough so where it's like very beautiful that people are just still like, that's great, you're doing an amazing job. And then for every like 300th person who's like, your pans are too dirty, I'm like, whatever, grow up.
Like, I know.
I know. I cook in them, as it turns out. They're dirty because I cook in them.
We usually wrap with the very real part of this, which is going back to the leftover, because we've talked about a ton of them. What is the leftover that's sitting in your fridge right now? Are you going to eat it, or do you have to toss it?
Amazing. You have actually asked me on such a perfect day, because I just did some recipe testing yesterday, and what is sitting in my refrigerator right now is like this gorgeous citrus and fennel salad, and I'm absolutely gonna eat every single bite of it because it is so delicious. And like, that is honestly my favorite part of recipe testing and doing videos, is like I just have this kind of like mess. It's like the best way to meal prep, and because it feels very luxurious, and it is, to the point before, I like had to supreme citrus all day yesterday. And so I just have all this kind of like very sexy naked citrus sitting in my fridge.
Is that content coming out?
The content will be coming out. It will be coming out.
Oh my goodness.
So tune in for that.
You were ready for it because that's why you had such rich storytelling around it, because you've been...
I was just thinking about it yesterday. The first like 4 recipes I developed after working at that restaurant all had supreme citrus in it after I swore that I would never do it again. And I was like, as it turns out, it's the best way to do it.
The things that harden you are the things
that are beautiful.
Yeah, that go with you.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. Well, thank you so much for giving me some of your time today.
Oh, absolutely.
I will see you soon, I'm sure, at a farm or someplace in the world.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.